We should discipline ourselves in small things and from these progress to things of greater value. Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. How to act. Never under compulsion, out of selfishness without forethought, with misgivings. Marcus Aurelius. Does what's happened keep you from acting with justice, generosity, self-control, sanity, prudence, honesty, humility, straightforwardness, and all other qualities that allow a person's nature to fulfill itself? So remember this principle when something threatens to cause you pain. The thing itself was no misfortune at all. To endure it and prevail is great good fortune. Marcus Aurelius. When force of circumstance upsets your equanimity, lose no time in recovering your self-control and do not remain out of tune longer than you can help. Habitual recurrence to the harmony will increase your mastery of it. Marcus Aurelius. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Marcus Aurelius. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself and your way of thinking. Marcus Aurelius. The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius. Reject your sense of injury and the injury itself disappears. Marcus Aurelius. Stop allowing your mind to be a slave, to be jerked about by selfish impulses, to kick against fate and the present, and to mistrust the future. Marcus Aurelius. Freedom is not procured by a full enjoyment of what is desired, but by controlling the desire. Epictetus. No man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus. Practice yourself for heaven's sake in little things and thence proceed to greater. Epictetus. So you wish to conquer in the Olympic Games, my friend? And I too. But first mark the conditions and the consequences. You will have to put yourself under discipline to eat by rule, to avoid cakes and sweetmeats, to take exercise at the appointed hour whether you like it or not, in cold and heat, to abstain from cold drinks and wine at your will. Then, in the conflict itself, you are likely enough to dislocate your wrist or twist your ankle, to swallow a great deal of dust, to be severely thrashed, and after all of these things, to be defeat. No greater thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer you that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. Epictetus. The flourishing life cannot be achieved until we moderate our desires and see how superficial and fleeting they are. Epictetus. He is free who lives as he wishes to live, who is neither subject to compulsion, nor to hindrance, nor to force, whose movements to action are not impeded, whose desires attain their purpose, and who does not fall into that which he would avoid. Epictetus. Learn to distinguish what you can and can't control. Within our control are our own opinions, aspirations, desires, and the things that repel us. They are directly subject to our influence. Epictetus. Desire and happiness cannot live together. Epictetus. Remember that you ought to behave in life as you would at a banquet. As something is being passed around, it comes to you. Stretch out your hand, take a portion of it politely. It passes on. Do not detain it. Or it has not come to you yet. Do not project your desire to meet it, but wait until it comes in front of you. So act toward children, so toward a wife, so toward office, so toward wealth. Epictetus. Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power. Seneca. The question has often been raised whether it is better to have moderate emotions or none at all. Philosophers of our school reject the emotions. The peripatetics keep them in check. I, however, do not understand how any halfway disease can be either wholesome or helpful. Seneca. Enjoy present pleasures in such a way as not to injure future ones. Seneca. Hold fast, then, to this sound and wholesome rule of life, that you indulge the body only so far as is needful for good health. Seneca. And as long as nothing satisfies you, You yourself cannot satisfy others. Seneca. Our life should observe a happy medium between the ways of a sage and the ways of the world at large. All men should admire it, but they should understand it also. Seneca. Who does not admit that all the emotions flow as it were from a certain natural source? We are endowed by nature with an interest in our own well-being, but this very interest, when overindulged, becomes a vice. Nature has intermingled pleasure with necessary things, not in order that we should seek pleasure, but in order that the addition of pleasure may make the indispensable means of existence attractive to our eyes. Should it claim rights of its own, it is luxury. Let us therefore resist these faults when they are demanding entrance, because, as I have said, it is easier to deny them admittance than to make them depart. Seneca. The heart is great which shows moderation in the midst of prosperity. Seneca. That moderation which nature prescribes, which limits our desires by resources restricted to our needs, has abandoned the field. It has now come to this, that to want only what is enough is a sign both of boorishness and of utter destitution. Seneca. Everything that exceeds the bounds of moderation has an unstable foundation. Seneca. I wish to instruct you in how passions get started, develop, and reach the point of exasperation. The first movement is involuntary, and it is like a preparation, or a threat, by the passion. The second movement is voluntary and controllable, and it consists in thinking that vengeance is necessary, because I have been offended, or that someone has to be punished because he has offended. The third movement is arrogant. It does not want vengeance because it is necessary, but because it wants it, it has already annihilated reason. We cannot avoid the first impulse by reason, in the same way as we cannot avoid those physical reactions I mentioned earlier, yawning when others yawn, or closing our eyes when someone suddenly points a finger at them. These things cannot be overcome by reason. Perhaps they may be attenuated by habit or a constant attention. But the second movement, the one that springs from deliberation, is also countered by deliberation. Seneca. A well-governed appetite is a great part of liberty. Seneca. Man conquers the world by conquering himself. Zeno of Citium. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm? Marcus Aurelius. The reason why we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth is that we may listen the more and talk the less. Zeno of Citium. To things which you bear with impatience you should accustom yourself, and by habit you will bear them well. Seneca the Younger. When someone is properly grounded in life, they should not have to look outside themselves for approval. Epictetus. You must build up your life action by action, and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as possible, and no one can keep you from this. Marcus Aurelius. Every habit and faculty is preserved and increased by correspondent actions, as the habit of walking by walking, of running by running. Epictetus. Don't give small things more time than they deserve. Marcus Aurelius. Steel your sensibilities so that life shall hurt you as little as possible. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. Jim Rohn. It is better to conquer self than to win 1,000 battles. Buddha. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. Lao Tzu. If the self-discipline of the free cannot match the iron discipline of the mailed feist in economic, political, scientific, and all other kinds of struggles, as well as the military, then the peril to freedom will continue to rise. John F. Kennedy. Self-control is the chief element in self-respect, and self-respect is the chief element in courage. Thucydides, rule your mind or it will rule you. Horace. For a man to conquer himself is the first and noblest of all victories. Plato. True freedom is impossible without a mind made free by discipline. Mortimer J. Adler. A disciplined mind leads to happiness, and an undisciplined mind leads to suffering. Dalai Lama. We must all suffer one of two things: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret and disappointment. Jim Rohn. A man makes inferiors his superiors by heat. Self-control is the rule. Anger is an uncontrollable feeling that betrays what you are when you are not yourself. Anger is that powerful internal force that blows out the light of reason. Know this to be the enemy. It is anger, born of desire. Ralph Waldo Emerson. As we grow older, we live more coarsely, we relax a little in our disciplines and, to some extent, cease to obey our finest instincts. But we should be fastidious to the extreme of sanity, disregarding the jibes of those who are more unfortunate than ourselves. Henry David Thoreau. Small disciplines repeated with consistency every day lead to great achievements gained slowly over time. John C. Maxwell. The one quality which sets one man apart from another, the key which lifts one to every aspiration while others are caught up in the mire of mediocrity, is not talent, formal education, nor intellectual brightness. It is self-discipline. With self-discipline, all things are possible. Without it, even the simplest goal can seem like the impossible dream. Theodore Roosevelt. The art of conversation, or the qualification for a good companion, is a certain self-control, which now holds the subject, now lets it go, with a respect for the emergencies of the moment. Ralph Waldo Emerson. There is no magic wand that can resolve our problems. The solution rests with our work and discipline. José Eduardo dos Santos. The cyclone derives its powers from a calm center. So does a person. Normal Vincent Peale. Prudent, cautious self-control is wisdom's root. Robert Burns. Not being able to govern events, I govern myself. Michel de Montaigne. If you do not conquer self, you will be conquered by self. Napoleon Hill. Industry, thrift, and self-control are not sought because they create wealth, but because they create character. Calvin Coolidge. Not to have control over the senses is like sailing in a rudderless ship, bound to break to pieces on coming in contact with the very first rock. Mahatma Gandhi. What is self-control? It is nothing but a highly developed vital sense, dominating and regulating the myriapetites. To overlook the very existence of this supreme sense, to miss the obvious inference that it is the quality that distinguishes the fittest to survive. George Bernard Shaw. Goals on the road to achievement cannot be achieved without discipline and consistency. Denzel Washington. He who reigns within himself and rules passions, desires, and fears is more than a king. John Milton. He who controls others may be powerful, but he who has mastered himself is mightier still. Lao Tzu. If we do not discipline ourselves, the world will do it for us. William Feather. Rule your mind, or it will rule you. Horace. We all have dreams, but in order to make dreams come into reality, it takes an awful lot of determination, dedication, self-discipline, and effort. Jesse Owens. Are you searching for more inspirational and genuinely useful quotes? Be sure to check out our blog with tons of Stoic quotes about just about every topic you could imagine. We encourage you to share this article on Twitter and Facebook. Just click those 2 links. You'll see why. It's important to share the news to spread the truth. Most people won't. Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight. Marcus Aurelius. Loss is one of the most difficult things in life to deal with. Whether it's the end of a relationship, getting fired from your job, or the death of a parent, it's important to grieve when you experience loss. That being said, if you can see loss as change, which is, in turn, nature's delight, you might be able to make the best of it despite, or thanks to the pain you experienced. In life, our first job is this: to divide and distinguish things into 2 categories. Externals I cannot control, but the choices I make with regard to them I do control. Where will I find good and bad? In me, in my choices. Epictetus. If you want to know who to turn to when it comes to understanding what you can and can't control, Epictetus is the guy to ask. Sweep me up and send me where you please. For there I will retain my spirit, tranquil and content, as long as it can feel and act in harmony with its own nature. Is a change of place enough reason for my soul to become unhappy and worn, for me to become depressed, humbled, cowering, and afraid? Can you discover any reasons for this? Marcus Aurelius, again. Marcus Aurelius teaches us what it really means to understand that your own thoughts create your reality. That last day does not bring extinction to us, but change of place. Marcus Tullius Cicero. We like to avoid thinking about death in our culture, but if we can learn to accept it as change rather than extinction, we might be able to actually live. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Reinhold Niebuhr. The serenity prayer is Stoic to the core. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. Leo Tolstoy. It's easy to blame everything that's wrong with the world on forces outside of ourselves, but the only thing we can change with certainty is ourselves. And, as a part of the world, when we change ourselves, we, in a small way, do change the world. We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. Carl Jung. If there are things that you don't like about yourself, you have to accept them before a change is possible. Everything changes. Nothing remains without change. Buddha. Ain't it the truth? When it is obvious that the goals cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the action steps. Confucius: obstacles will inevitably pop up in life. Rather than shaking your fist at the sky when it becomes clear that something stands in your way, consider finding an alternate route. Stoic. Quotes on embracing change. Can you learn to love change? And not just the "I won the lottery" type of change, but the bad kind too? Change in all things is sweet. Aristotle. What a simple phrase to remind us of the beauty and the ever-evolving nature of the universe. Live in each season as it passes, breathe the air, drink the drink, taste the fruit, and resign yourself to the influence of the earth. Henry David Thoreau. Have you ever found yourself cursing the heat in the summer and complaining about the cold in the winter? Unless you can learn to appreciate the present moment, however fleeting, you'll always be unsatisfied. Be a Columbus to whole new continents and worlds within you, opening new channels, not of trade, but of thought. Henry David Thoreau. Embracing change can give you the strength to journey into the depths of your inner self. While it can be scary, painful, and even a bit disturbing, you'll find that there's a wealth of gold hidden right behind the dragon. Let us rather run the risk of wearing out than rusting out. Theodore Roosevelt. If you're so afraid of change that you stick to the same old boring routine and ignore the wealth of possibilities in your life, you would qualify as rusting out in the eyes of Teddy Roosevelt. If you can understand the deep potential that can come from change, taking risks doesn't have to be so scary. Some changes look negative on the surface, but you will soon realize that space is being created in your life for something new to emerge. Eckhart Tolle. There's a good chance you've had an experience precisely like those described in this quote. Even when the absolute worst thing in the world happens, something catastrophic and traumatizing, you might find down the road that it actually opened the door for incredible personal growth and new opportunities that otherwise never would have come. Accepting change and having faith seem to go hand in hand. Sometimes you have to leap to learn that there's land on the other side of the gap to catch your fall. One moment can change a day, one day can change a life, and one life can change the world. Buddha. It's easy to dream big, but it can be hard to break it down into actionable steps. This has left countless people to believe that their goals are too far out of reach. However, each moment of your life has a butterfly effect on the rest of your earthly experience and the rest of the world. If we could see the miracle of a single flower clearly, our whole life would change. Buddha. Reminiscent of Jung's statement that modern man can't see God because he doesn't look low enough. There is something to be said for sitting with a single flower until we know exactly what both Buddha and Jung are getting at here. As the water shapes itself to the vessel that contains it, so a wise man adapts himself to circumstances. Confucius. It can be scary to change yourself, and it's natural to resist circumstances that we're uncomfortable with. But if you can adapt yourself to the world around you, without sacrificing your true self, beautiful things can happen. A scholar who loves comfort is not fit to be called a scholar. Confucius. This one probably isn't hanging up in the halls of any American universities these days. If you really want to know the truth of the universe, you need to be willing to know something for certain and have it ripped from your hands over and over and over again. Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. Lousy. Did you ever play with oobleck as a kid? Do you remember how it became a hard surface if you punched it, but a soft and mendable substance if you approach it more gently? Yeah, being alive is kind of like that. If you realize that all things change, there is nothing you will try to hold on to. If you are not afraid of dying, there is nothing you cannot achieve. Lousy. You want to grow, you have to be willing to change. The scary part about that is you're going to have to drop parts of yourself that you always assumed were essential to your identity. They're not, but you can only know this when you learn to embrace change and learn to have faith. As long as you live, keep learning how to live. Seneca. Lots of people graduate from college and assume they're done learning. Be careful of this trap. The last thing you want to do is be mentally 22 when you're in your 60s. If you don't think it happens to people, you're dead wrong. No sensible man, among the many things that have been written on this kind, ever imputed inconsistency to another for changing his mind. Marcus Tullius Cicero. Don't be afraid to change your mind when you've found new information that challenges your original position. That just means you're growing. To improve is to change. To be perfect is to change often. Winston Churchill. Personal growth is an experience of continuous change. If you do not change direction, you may end up where you're heading. Lao Tzu. Don't want to wake up when you're 50 still at the same desk job? Then you're going to need to do something to change that, otherwise you probably will. Very often, a change of self is needed more than a change of scene. A.C. Benson. Have you ever felt so frustrated by your life that you wanted to just pack up and move to the other side of the world and start over? Sometimes a change in scenery can be just what the doctor ordered. Remember though, when you get there, you'll still be stuck with yourself. To change one's life, start immediately, do it flamboyantly, no exceptions. William James. If you want to change your life, you need to let go of all of those stupid things that are holding you back from being different than you currently are. Don't let the idea of what other people will think stop you from becoming your best self. After all, you can't control their opinions, you can only control your own. We can change our circumstances by a mere change of our attitude. William James. Try it out next time you're waiting in line at the DMV. It's true. No change of circumstance can repair a defect of character. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Buying that bigger house or taking that trip to Tulum simply won't fill the hole you feel in your soul. Your problems won't be solved by a winning lottery ticket. Personal growth isn't easy, but if you can confront the parts of you